So about 5 months ago, I made this video, how to get started in Wild. And well, that video is like 6 months old by now, so I thought we have like 1, 2, 3 more expansions. Maybe I should make an updated video about how you start in Wild Hearthstone in 2021. Now, you might say, but Solem, it's December, it's not the next year. True, but people will watch that next year still. So for everybody in the future, how you doing? It's me, your boy Person here. We're gonna talk about why you should even play that. Because it's just the best mode in the entire game, it's better than standard, and I'm insanely biased. We will take a look at decks. What do you actually see? How does the meta look like? What is the playstyle for all the 10 classes in the game? After that, we will take a look at budget decks that you can play to legend. Get those Ws, get your card back, and win more games than you lose in the long run. And lastly, I will give you some resources where you can find your own decks, where you can see fun decks, just different ways of experiencing the mode than just let me play the same deck over and over. This is video 1 of a 2-part series. The next one is going to be about every single card in the game. Now that sounds like a lot, so let's back up a little. We're going to go over all the cards I would personally keep when it comes to Wild. We have like 3,000 cards. And most of them don't see any play, you don't need to keep them. So if you want to craft a specific deck and you need dust, the good thing is you can disenchant most things in Wild. But if you don't know what to keep and what to disenchant, you kind of need an updated guide, so I can make the decision for you. But now with all of that said, let's start with why you even should play Wild instead of Standard. I've been playing this mode for the past 4 years, pretty much since it was released in I think 2016, and that was for one main reason. Every card that I spent my own money on, that I spent dust on, anything that I work towards in the game, is available in Wild. When the standard sets rotate out in April every single year, then those cards are technically unavailable. You can still use them against friends and NPCs, as well as in tavern brawls, but most people that just play standard, they will disenchant their collection, and then if they invested X amount of money to get all those legendaries, all those decks, they can't play them anymore because reasons. I never liked that mindset. If I already spent my time and money on the game, I might as well invest that into things that I can keep forever and can use forever. So if you really think about it, the only mode that makes sense is Wild. It is also cheaper in the long run, even though that is kind of a misconception. People usually think that Wild is more expensive because they see like Cube Warlock and Reno Mage having like 10 plus legendaries. Those decks are not even that good. Even if you were to craft an expensive deck like that, you will keep the cards forever. Remember Lothar and Nax Ramus from 6 years ago? The card still sees play. When the new system was introduced with the whole rank update, I played Standard and Wild and both to like Diamond 5. So I still have bonus stars in Standard. I'm not sure if you have bonus stars in Wild if you never played Wild before. Which, before you get discouraged, is great. You play people in Bronx 10. Do you know how much fun that is? You face people that build their own decks, play for fun, and that is an entirely different side of Hearthstone. Something I wasn't used to. At least when I started playing, I always wanted to play the best deck and win. And when I then started to build a collection and just play for fun, just make use of the cards that I have, I realized that is far more enjoyable. And the good thing is in Wild, there's kind of less random but also more random. If you play a card that randomly generates another card, obviously the pool of those cards is bigger. If your opponent casts a random secret, for Mage there could be like 18 different secrets. You will never play around anything there. But when you face a specific deck, the good thing is you always kind of know what they play. So when people think that Wild has so many different cards that are all viable, not really. Most decks are refined, and outside of like plus 5 to 10 cards each, there isn't really much to add or change in a given deck. It's not like you have to learn most of the things in there. Like from all the cards in the game, like 70% don't see any play. There's not much new to learn. Let's take a look at all those deck lists. Which decks do you actually encounter in Wild? What do different classes play? What do you maybe want to play if you actually want to win? Keep in mind, I will show you decks that you will encounter the most often when it comes to meta decks. Demon Hunter, where there's like the Il'gynoth or Decay in Standard, and you play Soul Demon Hunter stuff and you draw all those things. That doesn't really happen in Wild. There's pretty much exactly one deck for Demon Hunter, and that is Odd Demon Hunter. Baku changes your hero power that you deal 2 damage instead of just 1 when you press that hero power button. And then you really just play hyper aggressive and you aim face. So if you like playing 1-drops and drawing like 50 cards for free, which can now even be better considering that Voracious Reader is now nerfed to 3 mana, which buffs odd decks, this one could be quite good. In Druid, you will notice that it's an older list, at least I took the picture from like a week ago. This deck is hyper aggressive as well. You don't play a single card that costs more than 3 mana, spread wide on the board, and you go face. The thing in Wild is, if you play hyper aggressive, most games are over by like turn 4. On the other hand, if you play a control matchup, that can take like 40 minutes. And if you play for fun, let's say you play York Druid, you can just watch animations for minutes and minutes. And lastly, there are all the decks with Aviana and Kun. Most of the time, if you face somebody with a combo with Aviana and Kun, it is going to be this one right here. It's Malygos Druid. Aviana changes the cost of all minions in your hand to 1, then you play Kun to get back to 10 mana, play Malygos, copy that, drop him again, use 2 spells faced, it's lethal. Hunter can work in a couple different ways. Ignore the fact that there's Poker in the list. As mentioned, I traded those like a week ago. You hero power, drop a card. You hero power and drop a card next turn. You can also play Big Hunter, where you really just play a bunch of big stuff, so you kind of have to survive for the first couple turns. But if you ever face a slow Hunter, they probably play something along those lines. You have Maxima to deal some damage face, and you resurrect your stuff over and over. If you like a more aggressive take on Hunter, you could also play Odd Hunter, but usually you would go with Secret Hunter. Secret Hunter is at least viable because you can actually win games. Odd Hunter is more like you press your hero power as it deals 3 damage. For Mage, you can play your favorite quest, where you get Open the Waygate. Get an extra turn, just cheat out giants and win. The idea? Simple. Play a bunch of spells, use Elemental Evocation, play 0-cost Mana Cyclone, get like 50 spells to your hand, win the game. You can also just win the game by playing Secret Mage. Whether you put in Eluneth or Sage is kind of the same thing at the moment, but this deck is so much fun because most of the stuff in here costs 0 mana. You can make it even more fun and put in different secrets than in here, and then your opponent has no idea what they play around. And then there are like 2 different versions of playing Arena Mage. You can play a more aggressive take on Secret Mage, which makes it quite good considering that you do have access to Zephrys in an aggressive deck, and you can play a fairly slow Arena deck, which is also more expensive. So if you happen to be a millionaire and drop thousands of dollars on the game, not that much, but you know what I mean, you can kind of afford this style of deck. It's mediocre, and if you face any aggressive deck and you don't have Reno or freeze effects or ice block, then you'd lose anyways. So this one is not pay to win or anything. This is just if you enjoy the game that much and you like Mage and you craft all the cards, this could be like a very expensive deck that you might want to try out. When you face a Paladin, most of the time it's going to be an Odd Paladin. So the hero power is going to summon 2 Silverhand recruits, you buff them, you summon more of them, and you really just swarm the board, play aggressive, aim face. Some people like to play Murloc Paladin, which is hyper aggressive, with the idea being that you use Prismatic Lance, get tipped the scales, flood the entire board, and then you just aim face. And lastly, there's Mag Hand Buff. Up until like a couple months ago, people used to love this deck. They used to play it basically as the only deck in Wild. But now Odd Paladin is kind of taking over again. Turns out cards that have the magnetic effect are basically charge. If you face a priest, you really just have 2 things to worry about. Do they play Raza Priest? Do they use Raza into Anduin and then just win the game because the hero power costs 0 mana? Or you worry about that you face a big priest that resurrects stuff forever. Because you summon the copy of a minion in your deck, and then the copy dies, and then you resurrect the copy, which then summons another minion, and then it resurrects something else. I think it's still the most hated deck in Wild, maybe of all time. If you face a big priest, you have so much time to set up OTKs. It's fantastic. In Rogue, you can play hyper aggressive and you play Kingsbane. You play a weapon that is pretty much infinite. It also keeps all the enchantments, which means you play all those buff spells, make the attack up to like 10 or 12, and just aim face. If you like the idea of actually playing more than just a single weapon and buffing that, you can draw things and shuffle things. It's more like a take of a standard deck, as you play cards like Foxy, you play Swindle, even Edwin. Edwin doesn't really see play in Wild at all, but he sees play in here. And lastly, there's Odd Rogue. Your hero power is a 2/2 dagger, which you just use to remove everything your opponent plays. And you even have a card like Beneath the Grunts in here, which shuffles cards into your opponent's deck. 3 of them. So if you face Arena deck, their stuff is not active. So what you see right now when you face a Shaman is either Big Shaman, where you summon big minions over and over. You give them Resurrect effects, so it's like Big Priest but more aggressive. You can face Even Shaman, where you hero power and summon totems. They even play Totemic Might now. I'm not sure if anybody plays that in Standard, because the card was terrible for the longest time, but this card is good now. Lastly, there's Odd Shaman. Not too sure why, probably because you can pick the spell damage hero power totem, but maybe because it's a meme. But Odd Shaman also works. Warlock has like 4 decks at the moment. One is called Pain Zulok. This got nerfed actually, because Dark Lair was way too good. On like turn 3 to turn 4, you're usually down to like 5 to 10 health, which then means you can play multiple Molten Giants, your Flesh Giants are free, and you just set up the entire board to be flooded and then you just win. You can also play Arena Warlock, personally my favorite deck. For everybody who ever liked to play that, it still works. I mean, it will always work, it has Arena. And the list for the deck would look like that. Then what people like to think about when it comes to Wild Warlock is Cube Warlock. Summon Big Demon, use the cube, copy it multiple times. Still works, but you kinda have to draw Skull of Manari by like turn 4 or 5. And for the last Warlock deck, there's Discard Warlock. You play Marcus as Imp, then you discard a bunch of stuff, you draw some cards, you get some additional effect. This deck is just hyper aggressive and random. So sometimes you just discard your second Soulfire with your first Soulfire. It's a whole lot of fun for the entire family. And for the last class, we also have 4 different decks. You can play Deadman's Hand Warrior. Because of Deadman's Hand shuffling another Deadman's Hand into your deck, this deck is infinite. So you just draw the entire deck, you have enough bot removals to live forever, and then you shuffle, play an Assault, shuffle again, you can mill your opponent. Overall, when you get used to this deck, it's really hard to lose. You can play hyper aggressive by being Pirate Warrior. You play pirates and they deal damage, and then you go face. That's the entire game plan, nothing much to say. Or you play the fun version of Pirate Warrior, which is called Menagerie Warrior. So instead of just pirates, you actually play different tribes. Personally, I like playing aggressive decks if they have a twist to it. I would say it's on the same power level as pirates, maybe a little bit less consistent, but more fun. And then the resident sleeper deck, Odd Warrior. You do nothing, your hero power. And you play really control heavy. To have something like a win condition besides boring everybody to death, you can play Sealers, Shield Slam, and Soulbound Ashtongue. Now that we have seen which decks you will probably encounter in Wild and what you might save towards, we should take a look at websites where you can find decks that you can use, win with, and get those Ws. Number 1 being hsdecks.net. I personally use this website, not sponsored by the way, even though it kind of sounded like a sponsored message. I just use this website because when you click on any of the decks that are posted there, you see the tweet associated to it. When somebody posts on Twitter that they got to Legend with proof, with a list, it gets uploaded to the website. You see the win rate, you see the deck list, and you also find somebody that you might want to follow when it comes to more decks in the future. Number 2, HS Replay. The thing about HS Replay is you do see stats for all the different cards, what to keep in your mulligan, and what different decks are played. Most of them are the exact same with like 1 card difference. The problem is all the aggressive decks have like a 70% win rate on that website because many people just started out in Bronx 10, play against people that don't know what to do. They go like 15-0, and then it counts towards the overall win rate of that deck. But it still gives you a good take on what people actually play, as you can sort by how many times a certain deck was played. And then there are websites like Outof.cards, Hearthstone, Tempo Storm. I don't really use those at all. Those would be all the sites that I would use when it comes to searching for competitive decks, stuff that you can play to actually end up winning. What about though if you want to have fun, if you want to meme around in a low rank? Well, I got good news for you. We have a daily upload channel where we play epic Hearthstone games very epically. And to give you something outside of just information, let's talk about 3 decks real quick that you can actually use to start out in Wild. Budget decks, so to say, that are really cheap, that can get you to Legend. And those are Odd Paladin. You hero power a lot, as mentioned earlier. The only legendaries you really need in here are Baku to get the hero power and Lothraxion, as the Divine Shield on all your Silver and Recruits is really broken. Play it, love it, win with it. Or you play Secret Mage. You play like 3-4 epics maximum, and most of the other cards are like basic common or rares. Most of the time when I play against the Mage, I lose. So if you just want to win fast by playing Mage, that's your go-to list. And lastly, Token Druid. I personally use that to get to Legend in most seasons, because games really just last like 2 or 3 minutes. Patches and Embiggen is really nice as a combo, as you can use Embiggen, then play a pirate from your hand, and then you summon a 3-3 or even a 5-5 Patches. But even without that start, it's still a pretty good deck. All the links and deck codes down below in the description. And with that being said, this was part 1 out of a 2-part series. Next time we're going to look at which cards should you actually craft, disenchant, what expansion should you buy, which packs should you open, and how should you approach the whole dust system when it comes to making good decisions with your money. Thanks so much for watching. My name is Solem. I hope this gave you some insight. Feel free to leave a like and subscribe and all that stuff. And I see you again in 2 days.